Now, moving on to understand what happened in the Civil War. We have seen the people got divided themselves into red, blue and different colors. Those are supporting the Bolsheviks, non-supporters of the Bolsheviks. Then we have the basic people who are supporting the previous conservative style. So, the non-Bolsheviks lost their support from the people mainly because they started to support the private property. They are known as whites. These people want to support the private property, and when the Lenin's government ordered the people to take over the Manor's lands or the lands of the nobles, and when people started to take over the lands of the nobles, these whites started to take harsh steps against them. They started to kill the people, punish the people severely. When they started to punish the people severely, they lost the support of many thousands of people who initially thought of supporting the non-Bolsheviks, who are initially expecting that these non-Bolsheviks would try to give some freedom for us, where the Bolsheviks are trying to implement in the dictatorship manner. But finally, after losing the support because of the harsh steps resulted in the loss of the support, by Jan 1920, the Bolsheviks were able to control the entire Russia. This entire Russia was able to get under the control of the Bolsheviks not because of the negativity of the people, because there was a confusion in the people. And also, other than the non-Russians, rest of all supported the Bolsheviks to a larger extent, and many could not identify who were the actual supporters of the Bolsheviks and the non-supporters of the Bolsheviks. In this Confucius state, they finally gave power to the Bolsheviks, but the Bolsheviks acknowledged the political autonomy of the people, and they have given the political autonomy in creating the Russian Empire into the Union of Socialist Secular Republican States. So these Soviet Socialist Secular Republic states have already made clear that we recognize the political autonomy of different groups, and finally most of the states are happy, which comes to the emergence of the USSR. With this, the Civil War comes to end. So in this part of delegation of the lesson, we have discussed completely what happened in 1905, what happened in the revolt, what are the changes that were expected, what did the king do, did he cancel the Duma or not? He cancelled so many times. He cancelled nearly 3 times the Duma. Later he changed the laws, which are in important laws when their elections are happening. So he changed the laws which are related to elections so that the non-conservatives could not step in to the Duma, and finally resulting in the abdication of the throne by Nicholas Tsar II, resulting in the establishment of a new Russia. Then we have a soft government which results in capitalistic ideologies, that is like Kerensky government, the provincial government. Later, by a coup taken over by Lenin, we got the Bolshevik government into power, which resulted in the breaking out of new laws coming in. When the new laws were brought in by Lenin's April thesis, that brought happiness to half of the Russians, while the rest of the Russians are very unhappy with that. In its implementation, many objected that one, resulting in the Civil War. In the Civil War, finally by 1922, Bolsheviks were able to gain the war or win over in the war, and now establish the Union of Soviet Socialistic Republics. The making of this socialist society, it was mentioned as earlier that very difficult or far away from reality. That was the list or the token or the name given to the socialist society. When it was initially mentioned by the writers who brought up this idea, it was being reverted back saying that it is very far away from reality. Now we shall find out how did the socialist society emerge in USSR. How did it actually got into place? Let us see here. The industries and the banks were all nationalized as soon as the Bolshevik government has taken over the power into their hands. After taking over the power into their hands and after nationalizing the industries and the banks, once they are nationalized, we need a perfect centralized planning which is uniform, clear for all the banks to be following, for all the industries to follow. So we need a centralized planning system. So there emerged the main responsibility of the government to have a centralized planning system in place. Along with this, we should also have a certain fixed plan to achieve something. We need centralized planning in order to maintain uniformity in all the banks, in all the industries, all across the country. So in order to maintain the uniformity, we need a clear plan, and along with that, in order to achieve something, we need a planning targets ahead. So the government started to plan the things and also the central plan which may assures that there is uniformity among the entire all banks in the country or all industries in the country. So they started to implement the 5-year plans for the first time in Russia and also in the world. So the 5-year plans were first started in Russia, that was in 1927 to 32. And again the second 5-year plan from 1933 to 38. So in these 5-year plans, they fixed the targets so that we can achieve this much target in so and so period of time by accommodating all the resources and trying to achieve our goals. So the centralized planning has come into place. The governments started to plan extensively on how to utilize the resources, and they have given the targets to the industries like oil, steel, coal, which started to show extraordinary results after the 5-year plans were implemented. The period from 1929 to 1933 is considered as a phase of extreme growth. The companies of oil, steel, coal have registered more than 100% growth rate, which shows clearly for us that the 5-year plans started to show its result there. And later, when the result is clear that there is a steady rise in the production, automatically it gets reflected in the economic growth. When the economic growth is clear, automatically we find it in the industrial production's high growth rate. When the industrial production increased, many people started to get more and more jobs. When the jobs increased, new cities started to turn in, where the city started to get expanded because many people are able to live up to their expectations. As industrial production increases, there is a possibility for the people to raise their salaries as well as the standard of living of the people. These all came together when these 5-year plans were implemented. So the making of the socialist society started with the proper planning. First, the centralized planning in order to maintain the uniformity in the entire nation, in all the banks or in all the industries like that. Then they started to implement the 5-year plans. Through 5-year plans, they want to achieve the targets. They are looking at the targets, and the targets are achieved for them at a very short period of time. This gave a boost for them to plan further. As the time passed, we recognized that the first 5-year plans started to show its impact and the production went very high. Yes, however, we also have the other side of the coin. The other side is it was very hard for the workers, those who are building the steel plant. Yes, they built the steel plant in just very short span of 3 years in the city of Magnitogorsk. In this Magnitogorsk, we have the steel plant being built in 3 years. But in the first year itself, as the workers are facing lot of difficulties and problems and the hardships, the work has stopped nearly for 550 times, which means literally that the workers are facing lot of difficulties. What are the difficulties that the workers are facing? For example, the temperatures in the winter are extremely low. Sometimes they are registered even minus 40 degrees. And even during this temperature, the workers have to walk the 4 floors down in order to go for the natural calls, in order to attend their nature calls, which means that there are no basic facilities which are provided to the workers. Even though there are tough times, the workers contributed and they worked very hard, passing over all the hardships, and then finally they are able to build the steel plant in the city of Magnitogorsk. Afterwards, what happened? The things major changes what happened was, in order to educate the people, we need extended schooling. Though they are not properly educated at the schools, that is the reason why they could not take over education. So they have dropped in their education and moved on to certain other fields. Even though they are settled in other fields, they need to upgrade their knowledges. So when this extended schooling pattern has come, there has been a relaxation given to the peasants and the workers to enter into the universities. There has given a chance for them to enrich their knowledge and also to learn by entering into the universities. And also some more better facilities are provided for the women workers, where there were crunches established in the factories and also at the workplace units. Wherever there is a possibility that women workers are working, for women workers' children, they can put them in the crunches so that they can happily work there without any stress, and the children can play here without being in the outside places where they are working, which is a disturbance for both the mother as well as for the child. And next, we have public health brought at the reachable extent of the workers. It was brought at very low cost, very cheap. The cheap public health has been provided to the people. Next, we have model quarters, living places for the workers to live at very low cost or the affordable cost of the workers. These all facilities are really very good, providing schooling, the extended schooling, allowing the peasants and the workers to enter into the universities, getting them crunches for the children, for the women workers' children, and also providing public health at very low cost, giving model quarters for them to stay. All these are very good steps taken by the government, but they were not up to the mark of the population requirement. Because of the limited resources which are with the government, it could not fulfill all the people's or the entire population's requirements. This is a negative effect of this policy. Yes, these are very good steps taken by the government, but not to the full extent because of the lack of the financial resources. Stalinism and collectivization. Stalin, the ideologies of Stalin will be discussed in this lesson, in this part of the lesson. And moving on, what is collectivization? That we shall find out here. Actually, we have planned economy which was being implemented with the establishment of USSR. Bolshevik, under the leadership of Lenin, has instructed and started to have a centralized planned economy. The early planned economic period, or the early phase, or the early period when the planned economy was initially implemented, it could not see its good results in regards to agriculture. In the field of agriculture, it could not make any wonders. Because of this, it was a disaster in the point of view of collectivization, especially production of agriculture collectively did not yield much results. With this, the people are completely dissatisfied, and Russia itself is having lot of problem or scarcity regarding the food grains. They are facing acute problem of the food grains. So during this period, there was also a conflict between the government and the people. The government fixes the prices of the grains, whereas the public has to sell to the government suppliers at that cost. Wherein government fixed at low cost, the people are expecting that it will achieve higher cost, and they are rejecting it to sell to the government. During this period, the great leader passed away. Lenin died. With the passage of Lenin, Stalin took over the leadership of the party as well as the head of the USSR. As soon as Stalin came to power, he was also known as the most famous dictator and also very successful leader of the 20th century whom we have. He is also a contemporary to Hitler. Now, moving on to understand what did Stalin do as soon as he come into power in order to solve this critical situation where government and people are in conflict. So, Stalin gave a statement, no price would be happening, so stop speculating about the price hikes, and many rich traders are holding the supplies in their godowns, and so he ordered the government to confiscate all the supplier holdings whatever are present in the country, in the granaries or in the storehouses or in the warehouses, wherever the traders and the rich merchants are storing the grains should be confiscated immediately, so that there would not be any speculation that the price hike would get extra benefit for the farmers or the rich merchants. So Stalin, in 1928, all the party members went on touring to the entire nation of Russia and finding out where the rich peasants are present and where did they store their stocks. The rich peasants are known as kulaks. So they used to go find out where the kulaks are, take the supplies and seize the supply so that they would not have anything stored further. And the collecting farming, Stalin got an idea. Why do we have this shortage of the grains? We have this shortage of the grains because we have small land holdings by the poor peasants. When these poor peasants are given large land, and when we have a planned economy, and when we have a long land of collective farming, wherein no more we have small holdings of lands, but further we will have a land which is very large and very wide, same like the industrial units controlled by the government, and which will make the people, peasants, to work and they share equally the profit. So this collective farming concept came in then to solve the shortage of the grains. So the basic problem for the shortage of the grains, according to Stalin, is the small land holdings of the peasants. So he want collective farming, and he started to grab the lands of the people, and he want to eliminate kulaks, the rich people. So further we will not have any rich, we would have all people who had collective farming, and this made to establish state controlled collective farming or large farming lands. So initially Stalin's party the members went on touring the nation to find out where the rich people, kulaks, have stored the supplies of the grains. Later in this process of touring, Stalin realized that the small holdings of the peasants is a basic reason why we have the shortage of the grains. So if you have large lands, the production of the land would be more or high. That's what the basic idea of Stalin when he wanted the principle of collective farming to be implemented. But there are many other factors which are associated with farming and the result of the farming. He forgot this logic when he wanted to implement the collective farming. Yes, when the collective farming ideology was brought into place by the state governed land farming system or state administered land farming or large farming, many people started to resist this one. That too, from 1929 to 1931, nearly 2 years, the Russian government started to force the people to start collective farming. So donate themselves the lands and work voluntarily in the fields. The profit would be shared equally. So what happened after this? In spite of collective farming. The production did not rise up. Instead, because of bad weather conditions, which has affected a major famine from 1930 to 1933, resulted nearly 4 million people died. The result of this famine was 4 million people died. So automatically, many people started to doubt what is this collective farming without any results. In turn, we got a severe bad famine hitting the land, and where 4 million people lost their lives. Even though there were negativities from the people on the industrial policy, on the agricultural policy, Stalin organized a new set of his followers who were ready to charge these people. Whoever talks negatively anything against the government would be imprisoned, would be exiled, or would be deported from the country. We have nearly 2 million people in prisons or in the concentration camps or the labor camps, what we have, and many of them are innocent people who don't know what is a crime, but the only crime what they did is talking against humanity. On the human grounds, losing 4 million people for any nation, it is a major loss, but still Stalin could not take this. Later, the collective farming started to yield results, but it is a fact that a famine hit due to bad weather and 4 million people passed away. Still, we have supporters of Stalin charging at the people who talk negativity up against the government, and they were sent to the labor camps, and many of them were forced, beaten, tortured, and finally they were asked to give their statements, and many a times many innocent talented professionals were tortured and killed. This is the other side of Stalin, where on the other side, one side we have a very planned economy, collective farming, which was a great idea of Stalin, which he implemented by hook or crook and started to make efforts, and finally he got his results achieved. But in this process, the methods what he followed are completely against humanity. Whatever it is, he drove Russia from a shortage of grains status or a situation to a state where its entry into the World War II changed the entire picture of the World War. So, from the extreme phase, he moved on to the extreme phase of severity, he moved on it to the extreme phase of wealthiness, that is Stalin. So, what was the influence of USSR or communism in Europe and in the rest parts of the world? We will check it. The global influence of the Russian Revolution. The global influence of the Russian Revolution was felt in every country. How can we say that it is felt in every country? Today, if we observe in many countries across the world, we have the parties called communist parties in that particular countries. So, many countries felt the influence of communism across them, and many countries established the communist parties. When we say the countries here, the people in the countries started to establish communist parties and want to form the governments on the lines, on the ideologies of the communism. But later, they also had an international committee or union known as Comintern, which was established by the pro-Bolsheviks, which means towards the Russian line or towards communism. But many people still doubt whether the actual face of socialism or communism is portrayed exactly in Russia or not, or in USSR. But after the World War II, most of the people or the entire world looked at USSR as a global face of socialism. It's a global phase for practicing communism. So communism got itself attached very closely with USSR. So wherever you get the name of communism, you immediately get into your brains the USSR. So USSR is a country which turned from a very backward country, a country which is exactly suffering to feed its people. They find shortage of grains always from 1905, 1915, 1917, 1920, 1929, 1930. From that situation, less than a span of 2 decades, it emerged as a great, powerful country or a superpower country. So a backward country turning to be a superpower country. The journey was not so easy. It was under the able leadership of Stalin which could make the transformation possible. Yes, the country progressed not in one field, in the industrial production, in the agricultural production, maybe because of centralized planning or the 5-year plan's motto or the targets were achieved effectively. Oil, steel, coal, iron industries, all were in par of excellence, all achieved than the required targets. 100 to 200% of growth rate is registered because of collective farming, collectivism. The farming also started to show its results after the famine which came in 1930-33. Later, people are very happy. All people are fed by the state. All people are get to access to the grains. Government makes sure that all people get good health, good food, basic amenities are fulfilled. We all agree, a backward country which was struggling to feed its people turned to a situation where it started to provide food for the massive army and a great power or superpower country. But is in reality the fundamental rights or the basic rights for the people are there or not there? Truly not there, because they could not find any place for individual freedom. Yes, they achieved development at the cost of sacrificing their individual freedom. The basic rights are denied in Russia, in USSR. So later, yes, people are happy with the developments, but people want some individual space. People want to have that individual freedom rights. The time passed on. Even in Russia or even in USSR, we started to get voices which are talking about the basic rights. Later, many countries reinterpreted socialism and communism in their own different ideologies according to their systems. But we could not find in USSR also socialism or communism getting it at the right place. So in 1990s, 91, the USSR got disintegrated. Later, we don't find any country which is now following communism exactly on the lines of communism. We find it according to the changes required, it got modified. Yes, we do find it communism in China, but got modified according to the requirement. We do find communism in Cuba. Yes, it also got modified according to its requirements. So now we do not have a truly perfect communism, which was a dream of the famous writer or Marxist ideology. So Marxist true socialism nowhere exists exactly in reality. So as it was mentioned by the earlier writers, truly and rightly, that socialism is very far from reality. Yes, socialism is truly very far from reality. So in this lesson, we have gone through the different phases: emergence of socialism as an idea, then birth of communism, then we have seen Russia, different revolts getting transformed from the monarchic state to a parliamentary state, then the cow happening, then again getting disintegrated, finally achieving development from a very backward country to a great superpower in the world. That's all we have in this unit.
If you like this video, please give a thumbs up. Please subscribe to our channel to get more videos on CBSE syllabus.